Hello, Ames Chamber of Commerce members. This is Drew Camp, Director of Public Policy at the Ames Chamber of Commerce. Today we're here with Bronwyn Beatty-Hansen, who's the at-large council candidate. At-large obviously meaning representing the entire community. She, like Councilman Garton, who we just interviewed, is also running unopposed, and she's running for her second four-year term. Before we get into the questions, once again, I really do want to make sure that we give some compliments to Model Farm and Iowa State Daily for really opening up their space to us and allowing us to use their studio and some of their resources to make sure that we can create the most high quality piece possible for our members, but also the candidates as well. Candidates will also be receiving these videos, so it's a great resource for everyone involved. So thank you very much for your assistance with that. As we jump into the questions, once again, we're here with Bronwyn Beatty-Hansen, at-large councilwoman. So Bronwyn, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you.
So as we jump into the first question, as you can imagine, the Chamber's a business advocacy organization. So obviously we're looking at the community at large and community betterment, but a large piece is obviously serving our business and our members in the business community. Mm-hmm. So as you look at kind of your 4 years in council and going forward, what do you see as some of the biggest issues facing the Ames business community?
Oh, yeah. So some of the biggest issues I think that are facing the business community would be our low unemployment rate, which is an indicator of economic health or strength, but it's also a challenge, I think, for businesses to fill needs. They have hiring needs, and finding skilled labor in our area to fill jobs, I think, has been a challenge for businesses. And I think coupled with that also housing, the need for a variety of types of housing that professionals or our workforce want to live in at a price point that they can afford to start with. I think those are the two biggest challenges I see for retaining and attracting workforce for businesses.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we really see as well as we meet with our peers across the state, and we meet with our business associations throughout the state. That's the thing everyone is talking about. Everyone is talking about the workforce, especially obviously us having the lowest in the, as an MSA in the state and then a lot of times in the country, but then also housing is another piece as well. And those are such big pieces to try to bite off. That's one of the biggest things.
Yes.
And kind of along those lines, as we look at unemployment and workforce, population growth is something that we continue to see. The state of Iowa has had very, very slow population growth since the 2000 census and then also after the 2010 census. So one of the things we as a business organization are looking at is how can we attract and retain talent by growing the population? And along those lines, how do you kind of see, what role do you see the council, the mayor and council, and the city's role in helping attract and retain talent and grow population?
Sure. So I think Ames has what I would say like a critical mass. We're an urban center. And so even though the population of Iowa itself is slow to grow, I think Ames gets population growth from rural areas within Iowa. So I see us growing. I mean, I think that is sort of inevitable that Ames will grow. But the challenge, or how we attract more people, or again, I think it's housing is a big piece of that, providing enough for a growing population and doing so in a way that doesn't cause Ames to sprawl too. I mean, we're looking at our 2040 plan right now, and I think the growth of Ames, we want to do that consciously and I think that'll be finding housing for the workforce will be a big part of how we can grow our population. But then also we need amenities that they want. So outdoor recreational amenities or entertainment venues and places where they can find those that are close to where they live, I think is what millennials and the modern workforce wants to see. So that's kind of how I see we can affect that.
Yeah, and those are both things that as we look at, not only at the local level, but then at the state level, this is one of the pressing issues we are looking at going for the 2020 legislative session. And those are exactly some of the things we're looking at as to how we can address those issues. And kind of along those same lines, hitting on some of the issues, that Ames is facing and largely the state in general, what do you see as the biggest issue facing the Ames community, and how do you think we should best address it?
The biggest issue facing the Ames community. That's a good question. In the next few decades, I think there'll be a lot of changes, both environmental and economic, because of the environmental. So we are still, Ames is a strong player as a municipality, but we're still part of a rural area that depends on the corn market and, commodities markets to do well and to have a robust economy sort of regionally. So I think we need to think about that, and as the environment changes, I think it'll make farming harder, and it'll make the rural areas harder hit, I think. And Ames is somewhat insulated because we have strong governmental entities and we have Iowa State as an employer. So, again, as a municipality, I think we're going to weather economic storms better than a lot of rural Iowa might. But so that's one issue I see. The other is the housing one. Just to address the growing population, finding unique styles of housing or enough of it too.
Yeah, and it's so hard because we've talked about that with basically every candidate so far. It's just the fact that, you look at housing, but then you throw the word affordable out.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things, so what is that? How is that defined? And that's one of the biggest challenges.
Right. Yeah, and we're working on like housing for low and moderate income, which has its, the definition is laid out of what that means. But yeah, when we use the term affordable housing, I think people have different ideas of that for like the young professional, what they can afford in terms of a house. But in either category, I think we need to, both the low and the moderate, but also just mid-range sort of affordable. We'll need to find ways to increase that. Yeah,
and I know that's a big piece of that plan. You mentioned obviously too the comp plan, the Ames 2040 plan, and then obviously Vanessa Baker-Latimer and Kelly Diekman in the Planning and Housing Department are always working on that too.
Yeah.
And then as we look forward, we were just talking before, obviously the last 4 years went by really, really fast.
It's true.
As we look at the next 4 years, as you look back, if you think 2023 comes, and your term is getting ready to expire, if you looked back, what would be one thing you would really hope you would have accomplished in those 4 years?
Oh, the implementation of the 2040 plan. I mean, it's a 2-year process, and we're well into it now. But I think getting that done and implemented, in the sense that it's acceptable to the community at large and the development community and the city, and finding that compromise, I think. So that'd be good. The extension of Grand. I'd love to get that wrapped up too.
So would we.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be such a benefit to the transportation network to have that done, and so I'm looking forward to that.
And correct me if I'm wrong too, it'll also be a pedestrian improvement as well, because they'll keep that trail right along the side, correct too?
I'm excited about that too. Paving the trail from where it is now, there where Grand ends, to Airport Road, I think is going to be really an important connection, bike and ped connection between like the Research Park area and downtown, and then eventually to connect that to the High Trestle Trail and to regional trail systems. That I hope we make some action on too in the next few years.
Yeah, and those are all big pieces. You've mentioned quality of life as well too. Those are all those amenities and things like that add up, and the city plays such an integral role in it as well. As we look at local politics, obviously at the federal and the state level, especially in the current atmosphere, we see a lot of hyper partisanship.
Yeah.
And obviously at the local level, we're fortunate that it's a nonpartisan office. So how are you able to, as a sitting elected official, keep partisanship out of your work as a city councilwoman?
I think we do a good job of that as a council, and that's one of the things I've been most impressed by with my time on council, is that when we make decisions about local issues, we really are doing it through a lens of fact-finding and deliberation, and we don't always agree, but it's not a partisan divide often. And I think the trick to that, again, is just to listen to facts and data and and be respectful in deliberations. It is interesting. I mean, again, I think it's so valuable, and it's telling at the state and the federal levels that that partisanship has caused such gridlock and inability to move forward, and that's frustrating. So I think we're very fortunate in Ames to have a council that is nonpartisan, as it should be.
And that's one important thing to note there too is, yes, you are completely correct. Yeah, you guys, and by you guys, I mean like the Ames City Council, but then also the mayor, the previous mayor Ann Campbell, and the current mayor John Hala, they take that very, very seriously. And I think that's one of the most important things too, is not only does every council member take that very seriously, but then also at the top level there, at the mayor level, that's something that's been a consistent over the last few decades between Mayor Campbell and Mayor Hala. So that's always a nice piece as well.
Yeah.
And then as we kind of look at the last question, something that always is kind of looked at, as in any campaign. Obviously, this is a little unique for you, and then also Councilman Garten, because you're running unopposed, and barring any unforeseen write-in campaign, you will very likely be reseated at the council come January. So, what kind of, as you look at what you have to bring to the dais as a councilwoman, what do you think is what are some of your strong attributes that you bring as a councilwoman?
I would say. That's a good question. I love learning, and so like learning about all the topics that relate to a city has been really fascinating for me, and I like it a lot. And I feel like I do a good job of it. So, bringing well thought out questions to the table, and I think I would say I'm a cautious decision maker, but I feel like we've made some really great decisions, so I feel like that's going well. And bringing that and the exuberance I have for the job and the city.
Yeah, and that's definitely been evident in the last 4 years that you've served in office, and I think it speaks directly to the fact that you are running unopposed, because that you have been able to kind of be deliberate in that regard, and you've obviously gained respect because of that. I think that's something as we look forward, not only with the nonpartisanship, but then also with the people sitting at the dais. I think as an organization, we've had a very good working relationship with the council, and we know that we're going to continue having a very good working relationship with the council. And we appreciate the role that you've played in that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm honored to hear it. So, yeah.
And before we close the video, I'd be remiss if I did not remind everyone that the election is Tuesday, November 5th. So please do make sure you get out and vote, not only for the individuals seeking city council seats or mayoral seats, but also for individuals on the Mary Gree, the Medical Center Board of Trustees, and our local school boards. So make sure you get out to vote on November 5th, or if you aren't able to do that, absentee voting does start on October 7th. So please make sure that you follow through on that if you're unable to make it on November 5th. Well, with that, Councilwoman Beatty-Hansen, thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a nice day. Probably cut that.